our last part here, Paul had a perspective on life that we need to have. We should strive for it. We should want it, right? That is the life and that's what we learned about last week, right? With him being in that last pot of flowers and how he was branching out to everybody else. That's what we talked about. And we should strive for that because he knew where he had come from, right? He had come from being the, let's just call him the Christian killer. He had come from that position all the way to this amazing follower of Jesus. And so he knew where he'd come from, and he knew where he was at, and he knew where he was going. And it went far beyond his physical life. And he knew that. And that's what we're going to talk about today is kind of the living past even your physical life. Philippians 1:18-21 says this, "So I rejoice, and I will continue to rejoice. For I know that as you pray for me and the Spirit of Jesus Christ helps me, this will lead to my deliverance. For I fully expect and hope that I will never be ashamed, but that I will continue to be bold for Christ as I have been in the past. And I trust that my life will bring honor to Christ." All right, get this. "Whether I live or die. And I trust that my life will bring honor to Christ whether I live or die. For to me, living means living for Christ, and dying is even better." So remember that part of that verse. So many people, they spend their entire lives doing what? Wandering around, searching for meaning, searching for their purpose in life. Have you ever heard that? There was a time in college where I was searching for my purpose in life. I had no idea why I was at college. I was like, I don't know why I'm here. I don't know what I'm going to study. I don't know what I'm going to do for a living. I had actually a couple of those moments. I was just kind of there. And the thing about Paul that is so cool, though, is that once he converted his life over to God, is Paul understood that his life had meaning because he lived for God. So once he turned everything over, he goes, man, I live for God, and so now my life has meaning, and my life has joy. And that's what we've been talking about, right? This pure state of like permanent happiness, and this joy that only can come from a relationship with God. And Paul had that, and he understood that. And all of us have relationships with friends, family, whoever else that bring us happiness and some level of joy. But it can also be a source of pain and sadness. And I think y'all talked about that a little bit last week, about who you're surrounding yourself with in your groups, hopefully. And so I heard Court ask this question last week to the guys, and I loved the statement. And the question was, what is the difference between joy and happiness? True joy is an inner happiness. It's more permanent. And the way he explained it and kind of dumbed it down a little bit, I loved it, was happiness is more circumstantial, whereas joy is a lot more permanent. So true joy is an inner happiness that's unchanged by the circumstances you are facing. So that's kind of the just one sentence kind of summary of that. And it's part of God's character that is seen in us as we all live our lives with Him. God's joy is inside of each and every single one of us during the tough times or in the absolute best time. So it doesn't matter, like we talked about with Paul and him being in prison and everything, remember? That it doesn't matter what's going on in your life. If you have the true joy that Paul had through God, then it's going to be there no matter what's going on in your life. Whether you're on top of a mountain or you're in a valley, metaphorically speaking. Well, I guess physically speaking too. But you will always have joy in your life. Y'all, sometimes the pressure of what's going on around us, have you ever noticed that it can kind of squeeze the joy out of your life? You got, tons of, stuff going on at school. You've got tons of stuff, maybe your friends are talking bad about you or something. Maybe you got problems with relationships with girls or guys or, whatever it may be, whoever you're dating, sometimes that pressure of what's going around us, maybe your parents, are pressuring you to do things, do better in school, you need to do this, you need to do that. Maybe your coaches, if you're an athlete, or, they've got all this pressure on you to try and squeeze everything out, and it squeezes all the joy out of your life, right? But if this joy is continually being reproduced in our hearts and minds by the power of God rather than by the power of the world, then we will never run out of joy. So if you're trying to fill your life with things from this world, then it's just going to be little spurts of happiness. But if you have God and you have the joy from God, then you're never going to run out of that. Am I making sense? Okay. So this is how Paul was able to, quote unquote, rejoice in a prison cell, right? This is how he was able to have that joy and find that joy. And, he's chained to a prison guard 24/7, and he's not knowing if he's going to live, whether he's going to die. He doesn't know the circumstances of his situation. They may come in one day and just decide, hey, it's time to kill Paul, and he has no idea. But he says, you know what? I'm going to rejoice in the good times and the bad. And he tells these people in these churches that he's writing letters to. And so Paul was compelled to live a life that honored God, that was propelled by God's joy inside of him. And so the last thing I just want to say is no matter what circumstances that you may encounter, you can experience the same kind of joy that Paul has today. You've just got to decide to do that. You've got to decide to say, okay, God, I'm giving everything over to you. It's all yours. I want to experience that joy. And it's not going to it's not going to be a magic thing where it just automatically happens and you're just automatically happy. But you get to choose whether or not that you want. And I'm not saying that, everything is going to be hunky-dory all the time just because, you're starting to, have this joy with God. I mean, you're still going to find yourself in crappy circumstances. I mean, people are, still going to pass away around you. People are still going to hurt you. People are still going to do things. But that's what I'm trying to get into you right now, is that no matter what's going on, you can still have joy. You don't have to be in depression. Depression doesn't have to grab you. Fear doesn't have to grab you. Anxiety doesn't have to grab you. Sadness doesn't have to grab you, because you have the true joy of Jesus Christ like Paul had.